everybody, this is Debbie Williams. I'm a grants management specialist for the FPAC Business Center. I want you to know that this video is not sponsored by the FPAC Business Center or the Grants and Agreements Division or the USDA. This is my personal attempt to assist you with filling out various forms and preparing packages to submit new agreements or amendments to the Grants and Agreements Division. Today I'm going to be talking about the checklist for grants and agreements that is going to assist you with preparing a package for a new grant and agreement to be entered into Easy Fed Grants, which is often referred to as EFG. You need to know that this checklist is not a required part of the package. It's only intended to help you put the package together. So this is for your personal use. Now, the first item on this checklist is to make sure that the SAM registration for your partner is active. And the way you do that is to go to the site called sam.gov, SAM.gov, and you'll get a homepage that looks like this. You go to search records. Make sure you have the DUNS number for your partner. That's by far the easiest way to search for them in SAM. I'm going to enter the DUNS number for a partner that we work with a lot under the ACES program. They're called NowCC, or the National Older Workers Career Center. Type their DUNS in and it'll come up with a screen that looks like this. So I'm looking at the DUNS number. I see that the expiration date is November 22nd of 2020, which means I'm good to go because their SAM account is active. You may wonder why you see multiple entries on this screen for NowCC. That's not unusual. Some entries are because an entity may have multiple locations, or maybe they operate under different business names. So not unusual at all, nothing to worry about. Let's go back to the checklist. The next item is to obtain a funds pre-commitment number from financial management. This is really important because if you don't have your funds pre-commitment number, your grants management specialist can't put your agreement into Easy Fed Grants. So you really need to have this form completed. Here's what it looks like. So you're going to have the state or division, state and division, the date, the names and contact information for the FRS, your program technical contact, and any other state POC that you may have. You need to make sure that the new button is clicked and not the mod. It sounds simple, but it happens all the time that the wrong box gets checked, and that messes a lot of things up. So make sure that you've checked the new box. Then your FRS will fill in all of this information for the funding of the agreement. They'll sign here. If they've got any comments for accounts payable, they'll put them here. And then they submit this to accounts payable. Accounts payable will process this in FEMI and assign a funds pre-commitment number, which they will enter right here, and they will sign to verify that it is done. If you do not have this back from accounts payable, you need to wait to submit your package to grants and agreements until you do. The next item on the checklist is to determine if you need advance payments. If you do need to do advance payments, then you need to figure out what categories of your budget will need to have advances, because sometimes you may have advances in some categories and reimbursement in others. So make sure you determine whether or not you need to do advance payments, and let grants and agreements know what the categories are and how much you want to advance. When all your documents are correct and filled out and signed, you submit this package to grants and agreements in ServiceNow, which is sometimes referred to as SNOW. They remind you that they have helpful hints on page 2 and page 3 for writing your SOW and your budget narrative. So make sure to check those out to make sure that you've got everything included that they need. So the first form on this checklist is called the GADSUM 1, which sounds like a really weird name, but it's a cool form. It combines several forms that we used to have to do separately And if you don't know what the GADSUMs are or how to fill them out, I have another video on my channel called What on Earth is a GADSUM? And it'll take you through the whole thing. So the next form that you need is a designation of program technical contact memo. That is the form that authorizes a certain person to be responsible for an agreement. You fill in the date, you fill in the name of the program manager. Obviously, you won't have a number for the agreement yet, so you can skip that part, and you fill in the partner name right here. Go down to the bottom of the screen. Your signatory for the agreement, which in NRCS's case is often the state conservationist, will be the first one to sign. So whether it's the state con or whoever the signatory is, make sure they sign first to assign the responsibility for this agreement to someone else, meaning the program manager. They sign first, then send this to the program manager, who signs to acknowledge that, yes, they are taking responsibility for this agreement. Next item on the checklist is the statement of work, which we will talk about shortly, as well as the budget narrative. So let's go down to the SF424 forms. Those will also be included in another video on my channel. So if you don't know how to help your partner fill out these forms, I have instructions on there to help you with that. Be advised that these are forms that the partners are supposed to complete, but a lot of times there are parts of them that may be confusing, and so it's likely that they're going to call you for help. The 424 is separate from the other forms. You've got the A or the C, which specify what the budget for the agreement are. Most of the time you're going to be using an SF424A, but in the case of a construction agreement, you would use the SF424C. Look down here at the SF424D. Again, that is a form that's only required for a construction agreement. We used to require the SF424B for all of the other ones, but that's no longer required. The certification of lobbying is a form that states that the entity you're working with is either not lobbying or they are, and they are going to provide you with an SF form LLL to talk about what it is they lobby for. And again, you have to make sure your SAM account for the recipient is active. Other documents that might apply are a current NICRA or a signed de minimis form or an other official indirect cost rate justification. This is only if the entity is going to charge indirect costs on the agreement. Then there's the signed hardship statement. This happens in the case of a contribution agreement where your partner cannot supply the customary 50% of the agreement. So this waives the 50% contribution requirement. SFLLL is only for an entity to provide if they do lobby. Right here you can see the grants and agreements SharePoint address, the funds pre-commitment request address, and sam.gov. Here's a reminder about the statement of work. It needs to be submitted with no tables or pictures or graphics because EasyFed grants can't show those. It only shows plain text. So everything you do needs to be in plain text only, please. The required sections of the SOW are purpose, objective, budget narrative, resources required, responsibilities of the parties, the accomplishments and deliverables, and the milestones. That form looks like this. So in the first section, you fill in the purpose, start typing in the white block, and it will expand as you type. You're not just limited to this little tiny space. Same for objectives. In the budget narrative, there's already text here. Please add on to it with your budget narrative because this section basically says that the 424A is part of the agreement's budget. Resources required, you will include what NRCS is expected to supply and what the recipient will supply. In the responsibilities of the parties, you leave this statement here, fill in what NRCS's responsibilities are, what the recipient's responsibilities are, and then in the next section, you choose the frequency of the performance reports, whether it's quarterly, semi-annual, or annual. In the next section, you're going to indicate the frequency of the financial reports, whether it's monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, or lump sum. Lump sum generally applies to an agreement that has a very short period of performance, like maybe 1 quarter. You would not choose lump sum for, say, a 5-year agreement. Down here, you would indicate what the deadlines are according to the frequency of your financial reporting. And this last payment section talks about how often they can submit their payments and where to submit the SF-270s to. The next section is the accomplishments and deliverables, and then the milestones. And in this last section, if you have attachments that you want to include with the agreement, you would list them here. Now, if you want to know where to find the checklist and the SOW form and all of the other ones we've talked about in this video, you can go to the link provided on the checklist for the Grants and Agreements SharePoint, which is right here. This will have everything you need to submit your packages to Grants and Agreements. Well, I hope this has been helpful to you. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. Have a great day.